Welcome everybody to another Path to Enlightenment class in lockdown. This virtual temple gives us yet another great opportunity to reflect on dependent arising and on the uncertainty of cyclic existence. And special thanks to our bodhisattva of the online world, Venerable who enables us to keep up these classes during these unpredictable lockdowns. We have a light offering this afternoon for Christine's mum, and this offering of beautiful pure light to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas is offered with the thought that it be the cause of protection, support and care for her, and also that Christine's mum and all living beings are free of all obstacles, free of all ill health, enjoy continuous good conditions, and continuously progress in the path to enlightenment for the benefit of all. And so we contemplate like that for a short time. Okay, we'll begin with the prayer of praise to Shakyamuni Buddha, which we will do in both Tibetan and English. Tampa chandende dejin shepa drachampa yangapa tsope sanje ripa dang shapsu tenpa Dewa shepa jiten champa Chebu doe kalo joa Lana me pa ladang minam chitampa Sanje chandende Beljawa shakya tupala shatsalo Charu chapsu chiho Teacher, Bhagawan, Tathagata, Arahant, perfectly pure and complete Buddha, all-knowing, having poise, Sugata, apprehender of the world, navigator of beings to be subdued, incomparable, teacher of gods and humans. To the Buddha, the Bhagawan, the glorious conqueror Shakyamuni, we prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. And the refuge and bodhichitta prayer, which we'll also do in Tibetan and English. Sangye chodang so chi chonam la jang chu baru danye chav su chi Dage jen so je pe so nam je dola pen che sangye dropa sho. To the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I go for refuge until becoming enlightened. Through the merit of my generosity and so on, may I achieve Buddhahood to benefit all beings. To the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I go for refuge until becoming enlightened. Through the merit of my generosity and so on, may I achieve Buddhahood to benefit all beings. And then the short mandala offering, and we'll do this and all of the remaining introductory prayers in English today. This ground, anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, Mount Meru, the 4 continents, adorned with sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered thus, may all beings enjoy such pure lands. X the seven-limbed prayer. I prostrate my three doors with a mind of respect and offer all actually arranged and mentally emanated offerings. I reveal all the downfalls and negativities that I have ever collected and rejoice in the virtues of individuals and superiors. Please remain perfectly abiding until samsara is no longer seen. I request you to turn the vast and profound wheels of Dharma. I dedicate the virtues of myself and others to the great enlightenment. In a prayer of the lineage of gurus, reflecting how our own ability to practice the path today is dependent on the founder of this lineage of teaching, Guru Shakyamuni Buddha, and all the lineage of teachings from his era until ours, including our own Kind Lama. Body born from a million magnificent excellent virtues, speech fulfilling the hopes of infinite beings, a mind that sees all objects of knowledge precisely, I bow my head to the chief among the Shakyas, supreme sons of the incomparable teacher, carrying the load of all the conqueror's deeds, by their emanations appearing in countless realms. I prostrate to Maitreya and Manjushri. The mother of conquerors is difficult to fathom. The precise thought is in commentaries written by Jambudvipa's ornaments, Nagarjuna and Asanga. I prostrate at the feet of those most renowned in the three realms. From these two great chariots come the excellent lineages of the paths of profound view and vast deeds, their essential points gathered thoroughly and without fault. Prostration to the lamp holding this treasury of instruction, giving explanation through compassion by seeing precisely and completely the essential points of all paths of Sutra and Tantra, holder of the conqueror's entire holy Dharma, prostrations to the glorious Losang Dragpa. I, seeing all the infinite teachings, supreme way of crossing for those entering the journey's liberation, moved by compassion to deeds skilled in method, prostrations to the spiritual masters who make everything clear. And the great treasure of excellence, the pair of the path to enlightenment. The kind master is the basis of all qualities, and proper reliance is the root of the path. By seeing this excellence and through much striving, bestow blessings to be devoted with great respect. This gentle support of freedom, obtained this one time, is most difficult to achieve. Knowing its great value gives rise to a mind seizing its essence constantly, day and night. Bestow blessings to generate this continual unceasingly. It is like a bubble in water, is constantly moving body and life. Thus remember the swift collapse of death. Beyond death, like body and shadow, white and black karmic results follow after. By gaining firm certainty in this, the mass of faults, subtle and very subtle, are abandoned, and the accomplishment of all virtuous collections completed. Bestow blessings to ever retain conscientiousness. The qualities of samsara are unfit to be trusted, the door to all suffering. Do not be content with these enjoyments. By knowing its defects, bestow blessings to develop a great aspiration, liberation. By that pure thought, great conscientiousness is drawn forth, and mindfulness and awareness of the individual liberation, the root of the teachings. Bestow blessings to make this the essential practice. Just as I myself have fallen into samsara's ocean, all living beings as mother are also like that. By seeing the responsibility for the liberation of beings, bestow blessings to be trained in supreme bodhichitta. However, by merely generating the mind, if not acquainted with the three aspects of ethics, enlightenment will not be attained. By seeing this excellence, bestow blessings to train with strong effort in the vows of conqueror sons. Pacifying distraction toward perverse objects by way of proper analysis of the perfect meaning, bestow blessings to swiftly and continuously generate the path related to the union of calm abiding and special insight. Thus, becoming a vessel trained in the common paths, enter the Vajrayana, supreme evolution of all vehicles. Bestow blessings to engage the easy path itself, that sacred way of crossing for fortunate beings. The base of practice for the two aspects of attainment is when guarding the pure vows of commitment is found to be genuine and certain. Bestow blessings to protect them even at risk of life. Then, by understanding properly the important points, which are the essence of the two stages of the Tantra classes, bestow blessings to practice according to these holy teachings, with continuous effort in the Supreme Four-Session Yoga. Like that, may the spiritual friend revealing the gentle path and the friends of proper practice stand firm. Bestow blessings to quickly pacify the masses of outer and inner hindrances. In all rebirths, may I never be parted from perfect gurus and the enjoyment of the glorious Dharma. By utterly completing all qualities, paths and grounds, may I quickly achieve the state of Vajradhara. So last week for our meditation, we did the 4-part meditation on immeasurable compassion. So this week we can do the 4-part meditation on immeasurable love. And again, the basis of this meditation is from Geshe Loden's explanation of the 4 immeasurables on page 153 of Path to Enlightenment. But first, for a short time, we settle the body and mind through the practice of breathing meditation. So first, sitting comfortably, checking to make sure that our back is straight, our hands folded in the lap, right hand resting on the left palm, with the thumb tips touching. With our head slightly tilted forward, eyes half open and half closed. Or if that's not comfortable, we can fully close our eyes. Then take a few moments to settle the mind. Releasing all wandering of the senses to external objects. Allowing our attention to gather inwards. So that our awareness rests and settles on just one object. As we observe the natural rise and fall of our breath. At the beginning of our meditation, our mind is often still caught in wandering to memories of the past, or plans or speculation about the future. For this short time, we let go of them. Allowing our attention to rest fully in the present moment. Simply observing the breath. And if we find our attention has wandered, on recognizing that, quickly but gently place our focus once again on the breath. Then, for the first part of the meditation on immeasurable love, we generate the wish of immeasurable love, thinking how wonderful it would be if every living being, whoever they are, wherever they live, whatever their circumstances, if every one of those individual living beings had happiness and the cause of happiness, how wonderful that would be. So we can reflect how wonderful it would be if the people who are closest to us and dearest to us had continuous happiness from this moment on, and continuously had the causes of happiness. All of their problems solved. How wonderful that would be. People that we might work with, those we don't know that well, come across day to day, but who, like us, are just looking for happiness. How wonderful it would be if their wish for happiness were completely satisfied. How wonderful it would be if those who are at this moment experiencing sickness, ill health, old age, how wonderful it would be if from now on they had continuous happiness and the cause of happiness. Those who currently suffer from hunger, or thirst. Those whose lives are full of fear. How wonderful if every living being in every direction of space continuously experience happiness and the cause of happiness. Next, we meditate on the aspiration of immeasurable love. So this is a stronger feeling than the wish of immeasurable love. Not only how wonderful would it be if every living being continuously experienced happiness and its causes, may it actually be so. May this come to pass. May all living beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May those close to us and dear to us have continuous happiness from this moment on. The same for those who are currently strangers to us, but who we know are identical to us, identical to the person dearest to us, in only looking for happiness. May their wish come true, all of them. May those who we find difficult, who may have harmed us, may they continuously experience happiness and the cause of happiness. Because while from our side we may feel hurt, we may find them difficult, through our wisdom we can see that from their side they only want happiness, never ever want a moment's suffering. May all human beings everywhere, whichever part of the world, whether old or young, whatever tradition or culture, may they continuously from this moment on experience happiness and the cause of happiness. May this be so. Quickly, quickly. This is the aspiration of immeasurable love. Next, we meditate on the pure, superior intention of immeasurable love. The wish of immeasurable love, the aspiration of immeasurable are extraordinary positive minds. But mere wish and mere aspiration in themselves are not enough. In order to actually realize the goal of bringing continuous happiness to every living being, we need to develop our capabilities, our own good heart, our own great compassion, our own great love, our generosity, our ethics, our patience, our energy, our concentration, and our wisdom. And we have the means to do this because we have the instructions in the path to enlightenment. Showing how, from wherever we are right now, we can step by step develop these qualities for the benefit of others. So we think, through my practice, I myself will cause every living being, without exception, to experience happiness and the cause of happiness. Whatever my qualities at the moment, day by day, I can expand the scope of my activities and my positive actions. I have some ordinary generosity. By expanding it step by step with good wisdom and good motivation, my ordinary generosity can become the perfection of generosity, supporting the happiness of all. At the moment, I have some practice of ethics. Step by step, by developing my wisdom, my energy, my strength of mind, my ordinary ethics can become the perfection of ethics. So that none of my actions of body, speech and mind are ever harmful, but only beneficial. At the moment, I have some patience, some restraint. Step by step, my ordinary patience can become the perfection of patience. unmoved, undisturbed by difficult circumstances or the harmful conduct of others. No obstruction to the continuous development of my great love and great compassion. Through practicing like this, following the method set out in the path to enlightenment, I myself will perfect my ability to benefit others, including bringing them the ultimate benefit of liberation. So I myself will cause every living being throughout cyclic existence to experience only happiness and the causes of happiness. Then we practice the prayer of immeasurable love. Which is a prayer to all Buddhas, bodhisattvas and holy beings. Please bless me. Please inspire me to practice like that, so that my life is the cause, that all living beings experience happiness and the cause of happiness. So we can mentally make this request to all enlightened beings, such as Shakyamuni Buddha, the founder of the Dharma in this era, Mother Tara, the liberator of all beings, glorious Manjushri, the essence of all of the Buddha's wisdom, Conqueror Maitreya, the essence of all the Buddha's enlightened love. Also Lama Tsongkhapa, and holy beings of our own time. For example, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Tibetan Buddhist Society's perfect teacher, Most Venerable Geshe Acharya Thubten Loden. Through your power and your energy, please bless and inspire myself and all living beings. Through your power, may I quickly develop all good qualities, perfect kindness, generosity, ethics, patience, great love, great compassion, bodhichitta, liberation and enlightenment. Through this, please bless me to bring all living beings without exception pure happiness and the cause of happiness. And we can conclude the meditation by dedicating the merit of this practice, reflecting that because mind is a continuum, every moment of mind colouring and shaping the next, there will definitely be some result from this time spent in meditation. May this time be the cause that immeasurable love becomes a stronger and stronger part of our mental continuum, eventually becoming a natural and instinctive part of our personality, motivating all of our thoughts, speech and action. Through this, may I and every living being throughout space very quickly, easily achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all. Okay. So we'll continue going through chapter 9 of Path to Enlightenment, in which we're covering the small scope teachings, and in particular the subject of lower rebirths. And we've talked quite a bit in previous weeks about the context of these teachings, how they fit in to the earlier and later parts of the Path of Enlightenment, and the different ways in which we can approach them, particularly given that for those of us from a Western cultural background, in particular, the concept of rebirth and of states of existence after this life is over, may be something that we need to work through. And we do that by using the methods of logic. So we'll talk quite a bit about the different ways in which we develop wisdom and understanding with the different types of cognizer. And we've also talked about the Buddha's example in the Abhidharma Sutra of rubbing, cutting and burning gold in order to determine whether it's pure or not. And in the same way, with this subject and all Dharma subjects, we gain the most benefit. In fact, we only truly gain benefit and understanding if we very carefully analyse and check that subject so that we develop a really good understanding of it. In brief, though, we've talked about the fact that we need to contemplate that at the end of this life, which is, we know from the teachings on death and impermanence in Chapter 8, is heading our way. We don't know when it's going to arrive, but we definitely know that it is heading our way. That if we analyse, effectively there are logically only two possibilities. The first would be that our mental continuum ceases completely at that time, which of course isn't the Buddhist position. The second is that our mental continuum goes on, and if we analyse, we can see that that the second must be regarded as a logical possibility. Traditionally, from a Buddhist perspective, it would be suggested that it's much more than a possibility, and that there's logic supporting that. But at a minimum, we can see that that there is no reason at all to think that isn't a logical possibility of where we are going to be after the point that our mental continuum ceases in this life. So we've also gone through some of the implications of that. So if we look at how our mind works now, we can see that we continuously, in every moment of our life, cycle through the experiences of looking for happiness and trying to avoid situations we find difficult. In our life, we go through some experiences that are wonderful, fantastic, uplifting, positive. We go through some other very, very hard times that we would wish never to experience again. We also know that despite our best efforts, although all of our energy is put into experiencing happiness, good conditions, for all of our best efforts, it doesn't always work. We have limited control. And so there's every reason to think that in our next life that the position would be the same. We're going to have the same pattern, but unless we have some insight and ability to direct the state of our mind, such as we experience through the practice of meditation, then we will have limited control over whether we're having a good time or a bad time. We also know in this life that our experience is shaped by the quality of our mind. That's generally, if our mind is steeped in negativity, if we have a lot of anger, resentment, jealousy, and so forth, then that isn't a comfortable place to be. It colours the remainder of our life. If our mind is full of generosity, kindness, connection, and so forth, well, then likewise it brings a positive quality to our life. So we have every reason to believe that if we have those positive mental habits now and in our future life, that it's likely to work in the same way. And of course, based on the way our mind works at the moment, we're only likely to have positive tendencies, positive states of mind in our next life if we create the habit of developing those states of mind now in this life. And likewise, if we have negative states of mind that we find troubling and difficult to deal with, then we know that if we don't put energy into dealing with them, then they're still likely to be there and influence our future experience. We also know that if we just look at our current world, that there's an unbelievable range of different circumstances. So if we were to imagine that we were at the point of considering our future rebirth on this earth, and if we're just considering the position of the 7 million human beings without getting into other non-human rebirths, the range of situations that we could experience in our future life is extraordinary. And in most cases, the types of circumstances that we would be likely to end up if we just rolled the dice, we would probably think are likely to be less favourable than those that we have at the moment, and particularly from the point of view of being able to practice Dharma, being open to Dharma, having access to Dharma teachings, having the time, the inclination, the circumstances that we can put into to developing our mind. From a Buddhist point of view, what our next life is going to be like depends 100% on us. It depends on our own karma, it depends on our mind, in particular, it depends on the mental habits and tendencies that we have. As we explained, and we went through one of the quotes from Geshe Loden in Path to Enlightenment, it's nothing to do with reward, so it's not like you've been a good Buddhist and so you're going to get a comfortable rebirth in your next life as a reward for being a good Buddhist, or that you've been a jerk in this life and so you're going to have a bad experience. It's all about mental cause and effect. The experience that we have in our next life is shaped by the causes that we've created in the past and that we can continue to create. We also ran through Geshe Loden's explanation of the benefits of contemplating the lower rebirth states, such as developing minds, such as renunciation, reducing our pride and arrogance, making us much more mindful of our conduct, of the consequences of our conduct, meaning that we restrain ourselves from harmful behaviour and are more likely to cultivate positive behaviour, which also makes our day-to-day actions more meaningful and more purposeful. Contemplating the circumstances of beings in the lower realms also develops our compassion, and it supports our realisation of refuge. And in fact, as we've talked about, these two subjects of death and rebirth are taught immediately before the teachings on refuge, which we'll get onto hopefully next week. So the worst case scenario from a Buddhist perspective at the end of this life would be that we would experience a rebirth in one of the three lower realms. We talked about the fact that those are grouped into three: the hell realms, the animal realms, and the hungry spirit realms, and that although some Western commentators have suggested, well, maybe these are just allegorical, so maybe the hell realms are really an illustration of what happens if you let anger and hatred get out of control in your mind. The animal realms are related to the root delusion of ignorance, and the hungry spirit realms are related to the root delusion of desirous attachment. But that isn't the Buddhist view. So the Buddhist view isn't simply that this is allegory or metaphor, that our positive and negative states of mind give rise, create karmas, and where they are throwing karmas, which is a subject that we'll come back to when we get to chapter 12 on karma. If they are throwing karmas, they have the ability to shape the quality of our future rebirth state. Again, we talked last week about the fact that we can analyse the way in which the various lower realms exist. So we need to understand them within the context of dependent arising, and we need to look at these texts from the point of view of understanding the essential meaning. So what is the point that it's really getting at? And as we said last week, the main point is to illustrate the connection between our states of mind and our experience, and in particular the ability of our positive minds to shape future positive experiences, including future positive rebirth state, and for our negative and harmful states of mind to result in unpleasant experiences, including difficult future rebirth states. So Geshe's explanation of the three lower realms themselves begins on page 259, where he first talks about the hell realms. And as I've said a couple of times, I'm not going to go through the description of these in detail. I do suggest that we read them ourselves. I do suggest that we do meditation on these experiences. I've been doing that myself over the last few weeks since we've had this, since we've been covering this subject, and it is a really useful thing to do. The word hell itself for Westerners, I guess, carries some sort of baggage, so we tend to equate it with the way that the term hell is used in other more Western traditions. But as we've talked about, really the concept is different. There's no concept of cosmic justice, of being punished for your sins or anything like that. It's merely a case of experiencing results that are similar to the causes, in this case, the causes of harmful actions of body, speech and mind in the past. So when Western translators have had to come up with a word to describe this type of lower realm experience, they've used the word hell because it corresponds most closely to a similar Western idea, but the idea isn't in its essence the same. The looking at the etymology of it, and just based on my reading, I don't have the linguistic knowledge myself, but the Sanskrit word narak has the idea of a realm or place or experience where there is no joy. So there's no happiness, no experience of joy whatsoever. So it's sometimes also translated as the joyless realm. Also, apparently, the Tibetan term has for the same idea, has an additional concept of being trapped. So that's hell beings are not only in an experience where there is no experience of joy, no possibility of joy whatsoever, but also this sense of being stuck in that place for what feels like an indefinite period of time. Within the Buddhist point of view, this is the worst type of experience or suffering that any being could have in cyclic existence. So it is an experience that's characterized continuously by fear, by violence, by physical harm, and by anger. If we try to imagine what a place would be like, or what a situation would be like if we and all of the other living beings who were there, that their driving motivation continuously 24/7 was fear of the other living beings that were there, hatred towards them because we felt that they were out to cause extraordinary harm to us, and anger about that. So every living being, so we ourselves, our mind is completely dominated by fear, hatred, and anger, and all of the other living beings that we come across have the same motivation. That neither ourselves nor any of those other living beings has any inhibitions whatsoever about the use of violence or aggression, because they perceive themselves as being in a situation of ultimate threat. And so all they can do, the only thing that they can do to seemingly protect oneself is to react with violence and aggression. Imagine a place where all the inhabitants are in great fear of pain and harm all of the time, and have no space in their mind whatsoever for any kindness or consideration of others. We're simply our mind would be so dominated by fear that we have no room for thinking of anybody but ourselves and thinking of trying to protect ourselves from the continuous experience of fear and harm. And also that we had the sense that there was no way, there was no exit, that we could find no way of escaping from that situation. So that's what a hell realm would be like. And if we read the description of the hells, these are the common types of experience that underlie them all. It's useful not simply to regard these as theoretical or fearful descriptions of potential future rebirths. It's also effective to use it to understand the faults of our negative minds, which after all are the causes of this experience. So if we analyse the faults of our anger, which Geshe Loden explains in greater detail in the medium scope teachings on the faults of delusion, which we will eventually get to, but we can see that all of these hell realm experiences reflect the dynamic of anger, the way that our own anger can propel us to harm others without any thought of the consequences. That if our mind is dominated by anger, then we lose all nuance. We divide the world into people who are harmful and who are the object of our anger, and who we need to harm back. If we act on our anger, then and cause harm to another living being, then of course that makes it much more likely that they are going to respond to us with anger, and that we will then experience further harm from them. If we have a continuous experience of anger, then it destroys our relationships with others and leads to this continuous cycle of retaliation. And at its very worst, taken to its extreme extent, then our mind of anger can lead to physical violence with others, and at a societal or cultural scale, it leads to generational hatred, wars, and so forth. So all of this is simply from our mind of anger. There is no violence on this planet. There is no war on this planet. There is no harm that is done to other living beings on this planet that doesn't stem from some sentient being's mind of anger. And we can see the way this works, that its ultimate expression, if we took that to its ultimate expression, it corresponds to the experience of a hell realm. So if at the time of our death, our next rebirth is framed by a seed that has that characteristic of anger, we can understand the logic of why it would lead to a rebirth experience that has all of those characteristics. We can also develop our understanding of the hell realms by considering the occasional hells, which Geshe Loden explains on page 265. And in one way, this is easier because we can use our direct cognizers or our inferential cognizers to directly see these types of experience. So the occasional hells, the occasional hells refers to experiences of intense suffering that human beings, for example, might have in this life. So, for example, being caught in a war zone. If we and our family are caught in the place that war goes through, then it's very, very like the experience of a hell realm, where around us people are continuously committing violence and we have no way of getting out of that situation. Our mind is continuously dominated by fear. Similarly, we can understand this by reading about living beings' experiences in natural disasters, or in things like plane crashes or car crashes and so forth. Why could any of us not be in this situation? Living beings just like us sometimes have the karma to experience this type of extraordinary extraordinary suffering in this life. If we reflect on what it would be like to be in any of these situations, then it can also be the cause of our compassion developing. So the experience of meditating on the hells in itself, we can be averse to it because it can generate fear within us. But if we also use it, if we approach it with a mind of strength and to develop our love and compassion to other living beings through the stance of fellow feeling, of understanding that we ourselves can easily find ourselves in a similar situation, well then this type of meditation is also the cause of our compassion developing. And in fact, meditation on the suffering of the hell beings is one of the subjects that is also brought in the Great Scope teachings to develop our mind of great compassion. So these meditations are useful. In fact, it's said in one of the Jataka tales that the seed of Shakyamuni Buddha's eventual enlightenment in Bodh Gaya 2,500 years ago was in one rebirth where he was a hell being and he had just a moment of compassion for another fellow living being who was hauling an immense cauldron of molten iron, and that seed of compassion that he had for that other being was ultimately the seed for his next high rebirth. So meditating on these lower realms helps us to develop our compassion. It also helps us to develop the realization that we definitely, absolutely do not want to be in a place where our experience is one of violence, of fear, of being harmed by others, and having a mind that wishes to harm others. Realizing that that's the case, we need to abandon the causes of those types of experience. And the causes of those types of experience are the harmful states of mind in our own continuum, especially our mind of anger, hatred, resentment, and so forth, which Geshe describes in later in the Path to Enlightenment as the worst, the most destructive of our negative minds. Also, we need to realise that the hell realm experience merely depends on karma. Nobody creates it for us other than ourselves. It's very, very difficult to escape from because, and the reason for that is because when we are in that type of experience, it is very rare to create any virtuous state of mind. So the experience of Shakyamuni Buddha was one exception to that. But in general, if our mind is completely dominated by fear, harm, the wish to retaliate, and so forth, it's very difficult to develop the positive or virtuous states of mind that can be the cause of a higher rebirth. Still, a hell rebirth depends on its causes. Eventually, when those causes are exhausted over a long period of time, then that rebirth ends. And the type of rebirth experience that we have after that will depend on our karma. The second type of lower realm is the animal realm. And again, like the occasional hells, this is something that it is perhaps easier for us to understand because we can perceive and observe animals directly using our own direct cognizer. So we can't directly know the experiences of animals, but we can make inferences about what animals' experience is like based on imagining how we would feel if we were in the situation of animals and by observing animals' behaviour and reactions generally. From a Buddhist point of view, an animal rebirth doesn't involve as much suffering as a hell rebirth, nor does it involve as much suffering as a hungry spirit rebirth, but it is more difficult to escape from than a hungry spirit rebirth, particularly because animals have have very limited cognitive ability or ignorance, as it's described in the Buddhist texts. Because of animals' limited cognitive ability, they can't recognise mental cause and effect. They can't actively cultivate the wisdoms of listening, thinking, and meditation, and so forth. Whereas by contrast, as Geshe Loden explains, in the hungry spirit realm, although the experience is extraordinarily difficult and has great suffering, that there are instances where beings in that realm are able to understand Dharma and to practice it in some circumstances. And so Geshe Loden explains that the three-dimensional realms are explained in this order of hell realm, animal realm, and hungry spirit realm for that reason, because for animals in particular, it's more difficult to change their immediate situation. We need to take some care in thinking about the animal realm, not to generalise from the experience of the animals that we might be most familiar with, that is by our domestic companions. So even though domestic animals still from a Buddhist point of view have an extraordinarily unfortunate rebirth, still compared to most beings in the animal realm, their circumstances are relatively favourable. So domestic animals that live with humans and are cared for by humans are a little bit like the royal family of the animal realm. So generalising from their experience, from our observations of our cats and dogs and thinking, oh, well, that's what the animal realm is like, would be a bit like looking at Queen Elizabeth and thinking, oh, well, human life is okay. Basically, you get to live in these huge houses with hundreds and hundreds of rooms. You don't have to go out and earn an income. People come and bow and scrape to you the whole time. You have a limitless wardrobe and so forth. So it's as unrealistic as that to think that our domestic animals' lives are representative of experience in the animal realm. And we can see anyway that even at our domestic animals, that their lives are so vulnerable. They're so dependent on their owners, and if their owners can no longer care for them, then their circumstances change really quickly. So Path to Enlightenment lists the 5 general sufferings experienced by animals. And again, it's very useful to meditate on these. And it's perhaps easier for us to meditate on them because we can relate to them by observing the experience of animals. The first one that's mentioned is the suffering of being eaten by each other. So again, we can put ourselves in this situation and imagine what it would be like if our whole life we had to be aware of the possibility that some predator was going to come and kill us at any moment. So our whole life would be dominated by the fear of that happening. And we ourselves might be in a position, if we were an animal, where we would have to kill others in order to be able to sustain our own life. That would be our only option. And because of doing that, we would continuously be accumulating the negative karma of killing other living beings. So it's an extraordinarily difficult situation. The second is the suffering of being stupid and ignorant, which again refers to the limited cognitive ability of animals. They're not able to meditate. They're not able to recognise positive minds and negative minds and try and reduce them and so forth. Like all living beings, animals' minds are dominated by self-cherishing. The root of all positive and negative minds, they can't recognise that. They can't reduce their self-cherishing. They can't engage in a practice of ethics. And because of that, they can't accumulate the merit that supports future happiness. Animals experience the suffering of being hot and cold. So we human beings, if we're too hot, then we can turn the air conditioner on. If we're too cold, we can turn the heater on or put on an extra jacket. For animals who are in the wild, they can be very limited. There can be very little that they can do. If they're in an environment that is too hot and they can't find shade, then they simply have to experience it, even though it may be the cause of their death. Animals have the suffering of being hungry and thirsty, and again, their ability to satisfy their hunger or their thirst depends entirely on the environment that they're in. Their ability to change that or deal with that is much more limited than is the experience for human beings. So there's very limited ability to experience peace, happiness, satisfaction if during our whole life we're struggling just to fund the basics of food and drink. The fifth one is that animals have the suffering of being exploited. So although animals are living beings just like us, their minds function exactly the same way as we do. They only look for happiness, never want suffering. Nonetheless, they're regarded as effectively as being property, as being objects, rather than being living beings in the same way that we are. Animals are killed for our food and clothing and so forth. They're used as beasts of burden. They're used for experimentation, for breeding, for entertainment. Some people hunt animals for recreation. So this is a dreadful, if we were placed in that situation, it would be absolutely calamitous. And so Geshe quotes Nagarjuna, where he talks about this type of suffering on page 268, where he says, some die, 269, I beg your pardon, some die for the sake of pearls or wool, bones, flesh or skin. Other helpless ones are exploited with the blows of kicking, fists, whip, hooks and prods. Geshe also makes the point that we humans tend to have a very unrealistic view of animals and their significance. So we really don't get the fact that animals' minds function in exactly the same way as ours do, and that they go about their lives just in the same way as we do, looking for more happiness, satisfaction, and so forth. As human beings, we often tend to think that it's normal if animals are mistreated or killed, but that it's an absolute, it's something dreadful and tragic and outrageous if an animal were to kill a human. So, for example, when there are shark attacks, then naturally everybody has great fear. People try to cull sharks and so forth. It causes a great deal of upset from human beings. In fact, around the world, around 100 humans are killed by sharks each year, but conservatively around 100 million sharks are killed by humans each year. And so Geshe says in reality, it isn't at all strange that an animal might kill a human because we really function according to the same tendency of self-cherishing. So Geshe concludes this section by saying, when you think of the suffering of animals, you will recognise that the perfect human rebirth of leisure and fortune is extremely precious and a wonderful opportunity to practice the Dharma and attain enlightenment. Then Geshe talks finally about the hungry spirit realms, and this explanation begins on page 269. And he explains that the main suffering of beings who are born in this type of environment is lack of food and drink, or lack of being able to satisfy themselves. The main karmic cause of this type of rebirth experience is negative minds, particularly the minds of miserliness or covetousness. As Geshe said, as I mentioned earlier, Geshe explains that hungry spirits have more wisdom than animals and may be able to practice Dharma at certain times, but nonetheless, they generally have much greater sufferings than in the animal rebirth. And these are grouped into an explanation of particular sufferings, or sufferings that are unique to hungry spirits, and general sufferings, which are sufferings that hungry spirits have along with other living beings. So the particular sufferings of hungry spirits are related especially to hungry spirits' tendency to be grasping or to try to satisfy their desire. So their whole lives, their whole existence is motivated by the wish to satisfy their desire for food or drink. And in a hungry spirit existence, their ability to satisfy that desire is obstructed by all sorts of different obstacles. So Geshe talks about the external obstacles that hungry spirit realms experience, the internal obstacles that they experience, and also the fact that the food and drink that hungry spirits spend their whole lives grasping after themselves become obstacles to their happiness. So even if they gain them, rather than being the cause of satisfaction, they're the cause of suffering. So again, we can consider this in relation to the way that our attachment, our desirous attachment and grasping can function in our own lives. The general sufferings of hungry spirits are the sufferings of heat, of cold, of hunger, of thirst and fatigue, and of fear. And Nagarjuna summarises these in the verse on page 272 at the top, where he says, "Also among hungry spirits there is constant and unavoidable suffering of lacking desired things. They undergo most terrible misery due to hunger, thirst, cold, heat, fatigue, and fear." So this type of rebirth experience is conditioned or framed or coloured by the mind of grasping, desirous attachment, covetousness, a mind that is never capable of being satisfied. And again, we can relate to the type of mentality that we might have in this life that is similar to this type of rebirth experience. When we have very, very strong grasping or desirous attachment that really dominates our thinking and our motivation. When we are dominated by the types of mind that are compelling us to feel that we always need new and better things. When we find that we're not satisfied with the things that we have and we're always looking for more and more, for more and different experiences. Also, the fear that we don't have enough or mightn't have enough. So at the beginning of any lockdown, if you go to the toilet roll aisle in any supermarket, we can see a manifestation of this type of hungry spirit mind. So this fear of not having enough and of lack, the mind of lack, the mind that we don't have enough, the mind of poverty is also an obstacle to our generosity. So Geshe gives some final comments on the teachings on the lower rebirths on page 274, where he says, "The nature of our next rebirth isn't determined by our gender. It isn't determined by whether we're a lay person or an ordained person. Doesn't matter whether we're rich or poor. It is determined entirely by our karma. A positive karmic potential, if it's activated, will lead to a high rebirth, and a negative karmic potential, when activated, will lead to a lower rebirth. In general, our negative actions will result in rebirth in the lower realms, but which of the lower realms a negative potential will cause us to be reborn in depends on the intensity of the motivation at the time that karmic seed was created, and also the energy that was put into the negative action concerned. Very heavy negative actions, very harmful actions, those that are motivated with the most intensive negativity, such as hatred or anger, accompanied by the greatest energy that causes the greatest harm. For example, to many, many living beings, these types of experience are the cause of rebirth in the hell realms. Negative karmas that are less heavy, and particularly those that are based on desirous attachment, bring the hungry spirit rebirth, and the least heavy karmic potentials bring about an animal rebirth. And as I mentioned, when we get to the subject of karma, we'll talk more about the types of karma that have the energy to shape a future rebirth state, that is to say, throwing karma. The way, then, that we prevent rebirth in the lower realms and ensure a high rebirth is, from a small scope perspective, the immediate thing we do is to take refuge and to observe the practice of karma. And these are the next two subjects that are taught in the small scope. Observing karma, what that refers to specifically, is practicing virtuous conduct, body, speech and mind. In this current human rebirth, this temporary human rebirth that we currently have, we have the chance to create causes of another perfect human rebirth like this in future, for rebirth in any of the higher realms, or also to achieve liberation or enlightenment, the complete cessation of suffering. So Geshe concludes on page 275, where he says, having this excellent opportunity, it is vital that we recognise the nature of the sufferings of the higher and lower realms. This stimulates us to gain the maximum benefit from this life. So, to overcome laziness and cultivate the effort with which to generate the path and to develop the inspiration to achieve liberation, the contemplation of suffering is emphasised. If Lord Buddha himself were alive today, he would not add to this instruction. Okay, so that's where we'll finish up today. And in fact, Geshe's chapter finishes up with the outline, which explains where we're going next. The next subject that we will begin next Sunday is the subject of refuge. Now we're probably running a bit. Okay. No, we do have a question. Yeah, Monica, do you want to send it through? So Michelle's asked, how do we know how these realms exist, who discovered them? As we talked about a few weeks back, the way that we approach our understanding of any of these realms is by relying on our various types of valid cognizer. So in particular, the way that we would understand that these realms exist is that their existence has been taught by a reliable source. So we know that the Buddha, we know that other religious teachers have taught about the existence of these realms. We need to assess the reliability of those teachers by examining, for example, the teachings that they give us that we can actually validate directly. And if we find that somebody teaches us a subject and on the things that we can verify directly, it makes sense, it lines up, well then that gives us more confidence that when they teach us on subjects that we can't validate directly through a direct cognizer or a valid cognizer, an inferential cognizer through the power of fact, that gives us greater confidence that they're giving us a reliable account. But as I say, and as I've said, this is really something that we need to apply our own analysis to. So no other questions, Monica? Great, thank you. Okay, so we'll do the the dedication prayers. So we'll do the final prayer of the graduated path just in English. By the two collections, vast as space, amassed with effort for a long time, may I become a chief of conquerors, a guide for all beings whose mind's eye is blinded by ignorance. Also in all lives, while not yet come to that, may Manjushri favour me with his compassion. Finding the supreme path, complete with all stages of the teachings, may I please the conquerors by practising well. By my precise understanding of the essential points of the path, with skillful means drawn along by strong compassion, and by dispelling the mental darkness of beings, may I uphold the conqueror's teaching for a long time. Where the supreme precious teaching has not spread, also where it has spread but become degenerate, with a mind deeply moved by great compassion, may I make clear this treasure of benefit and bliss. The stages of the path, excellently established by the marvellous deeds of the conquerors and their sons, give glory to the minds of those aspiring for liberation. May the conqueror's deeds be long preserved. May all humans and non-humans who remove the obstructions and establish conditions favourable to cultivating the excellent path never be parted for all of their lifetimes from the purest of paths which the Buddhas have praised. When someone makes effort to practice properly the 10 points of conduct of the Supreme Vehicle, may he always be assisted by the mighty protectors, and may oceans of good fortune spread out, reaching all. And we'll do the general dedication prayer in both Tibetan and English. Gewandi eche bokon sonam yeshe zog zog jin sonam yeshe lejo we damba koni topasho. By this virtue, may all beings complete the collections of wisdom and merit, and attain the two holy bodies arisen from wisdom and merit. Jangjo sem chogren boche ma che panam che jo che che panyamba me pa ye gong ne gong do pel ba sho. May the precious superior mind of enlightenment be generated in those who have not yet generated it, and not decrease in those who have developed it, but increase continuously. Okay, thank you everyone, and again, special thanks to Manakam, and thank you, Scott. Happy birthday to you as well. Happy birthday always, every day. I'm conscious of the fact that I did really race through the last part of that chapter because we've spent several weeks in it. I was quite keen to get on to the next chapter next week. So we will begin with chapter 10, Refuge, next week. If you're interested in doing some pre-reading, then I'll probably only actually cover the subject of the causes of going for refuge. So even though it's only 2 or 3 pages, there's a great deal in that. So if you like going through just that 2 or 3 pages, reading it carefully, analysing, rubbing, cutting and burning, if there are things that you're not sure about, thinking about that, trying to figure out what it might mean, then that's really a good approach. So yeah, in any event, we'll cover that next week. So thank you again to everybody, and see you either online or in person. I don't think it'll be in person this week, but it would be great if it was. Next week, but it will be great if it was. Thanks very much. Have a great week. Bye.